The cameras have stopped rolling, but the stories haven't ended. Across Lowe's Angels, behind wrought iron gates in marble, lie the final resting places of Hollywood's golden icons. But for some of these luminaries, final may be the wrong word entirely. There's something different about celebrity graves, revealed a longtime groundskeeper at a Hollywood cemetery. Regular folks rest, famous people they linger. It's like they can't quite accept the show is over, or maybe we won't let them go. Either way, certain plots here have activity that can't be easily explained. Tonight, we explore 9 of Hollywood's most persistently active grave sites, final resting places where staff, visitors, and paranormal investigators consistently report unexplained phenomena that suggest Golden Age stars may still be making their presence known long after their final curtain call. It's a very happy time. I'm happy to be back. I got started my. Yes. Well, you're a happy girl now. In the small, elegant Westwood Village Memorial Park, surrounded by quiet residential streets and the UCLA campus buildings, lies Hollywood's most iconic. Monroe. Since her mysterious death in 1962, Monroe's crypt has become both a pilgrimage site and a paranormal hotspot, a place where the boundary between fan devotion and genuine supernatural phenomena becomes increasingly blurred. She was Hollywood's most tragic icon, and her crypt is never silent, confirmed a security guard who has worked night shifts at the cemetery for over 15 years. Most famous graves receive visitors, flowers, occasional whispered words. This is different. There's a persistent energy there that doesn't dissipate even when the grounds are empty and locked. Something remains active regardless of human presence. That activity manifests in consistent, specific ways, reported by numerous unrelated visitors and staff. Cold spots, sudden localized drops in temperature with no explanation, are frequently reported directly in front of her crypt, even on the warmest Lowe's Angels afternoons. More intriguingly, many visitors report the distinct scent of number 5, Monroe's signature perfume, wafting near the marble wall when no one wearing fragrance is present. Visitors report cold spots, phantom perfume, and a presence that feels watched, explained a tour guide who regularly brings groups through the cemetery. What's convincing is when someone who knows nothing about perfume preference suddenly asks, "Does anyone else smell?" It happens at least once a month, always near her crypt, always when there's no obvious source. The most disturbing reports come from security personnel working overnight shifts. Multiple guards interviewed separately over different years have reported hearing soft, muffled sounds emanating from the wall where Monroe's crypt is located, sounds some describe as weeping or quiet conversation, though no distinct words are discernible. One guard claimed he heard soft crying from inside the wall, revealed the cemetery administrator. He was a former military man, not prone to imagination or exaggeration. He submitted his resignation the next day, refusing to work nights again. When pressed, he would only say, "Some sadness shouldn't be witnessed. It's too private." Paranormal researchers suggest that if Monroe's spirit does linger, it might reflect the circumstances of both her life and her death. Known for her fear of being alone and her desire for connection, Monroe died in isolation under circumstances that continue to generate controversy and conspiracy theories. This combination of emotional vulnerability and unresolved endings creates what some parapsychologists call a perfect storm for spiritual activity. They say never liked being alone, and maybe she still isn't, noted a medium who has conducted several sanctioned after-hours investigations at the cemetery. The energy doesn't feel threatening or negative, just unsettled, seeking connection. It's consistent with someone who never found peace in life continuing to seek it after death. Whether these experiences reflect genuine paranormal activity or the powerful psychological impact of Monroe's enduring cultural significance Her crypt remains one of Hollywood's most active locations for reported phenomena. A final resting place where the star who never found peace in life seems equally restless in death. Music. At Hollywood Forever Cemetery, among the industry's most ornate monuments and mausoleums, the grave of silent film's greatest lover has generated consistent reports of unusual activity for nearly a century. The Italian-born star who defined romantic masculinity for the 1920s before his untimely death at age 31 appears to have maintained his restless, passionate nature long after his physical form was laid to rest. Died young, but his ghost grew old, observed a groundskeeper who has maintained the cemetery for over 2 decades. Most paranormal activity stays consistent over time, with witnesses from the 1930s through today describe seeing the same figure, a man in period clothing moving with purpose through the grounds, always near his resting place but never quite at rest. The paranormal activity associated with grave falls into two distinct categories. The first centers around the famous Lady in Black, a mysterious veiled woman who began visiting his grave shortly after his death in 1926 and continues in various incarnations to this day. While the original visitor's identity sparked decades of speculation, the tradition she began has evolved into a phenomenon some believe creates a psychic channel that strengthens presence at the site. Every year, a mysterious lady in black visits his grave, confirmed a Hollywood historian who documented the tradition. What's interesting is that even when no official lady is performing the ritual, security cameras occasionally capture glimpses of a dark-clothed figure approaching the grave during off hours when the cemetery is closed. When guards investigate, no one is there, but fresh flowers sometimes appear without explanation. The second, and more directly supernatural, category involves of a male figure matching distinctive appearance and mannerisms. Security personnel working night shifts have repeatedly reported glimpsing a man in dark clothing, with a cape or long coat moving through the garden area's nearest resting place, only to disappear when approached. And at night, workers say they've seen a man in a cape vanish behind the mausoleum gates, said a paranormal investigator who has interviewed multiple witnesses. Descriptions remain consistent across decades. A dark-haired man of medium height wearing clothing from the 1920s, moving with the posture and gait was known for, most often seen near the cathedral mausoleum where he's interred, particularly around the anniversary of his death in August. Technical anomalies further suggest unusual energy around his grave. Electrical disturbances, malfunctioning cameras, draining batteries, flickering lights, occur with unusual frequency near his resting place. Doors to the mausoleum sometimes open or close without apparent cause, particularly during quiet periods when few visitors are present. Lights flicker, doors creak, noted a security supervisor. We've replaced the wiring, checked for drafts, looked for logical explanations, but it happens consistently in that specific area, especially around his birthday and death anniversary. Maintenance staff joke that he's still making dramatic entrances and exits. Paranormal researchers suggest his continued presence might reflect his sudden death at the height of fame. Cut down by peritonitis before he reached his full potential, he received one of the most dramatic funerals in Hollywood history, with thousands of fans nearly rioting to pay respects. This combination, sudden transition, unfinished story, and intense public emotion, creates what some parapsychologists consider ideal conditions for spiritual imprints to remain active. The Latin lover isn't resting. He's wandering, suggested a medium who has investigated the site. The energy doesn't feel trapped or suffering, more like someone still taking curtain calls, enjoying the continuing attention, and perhaps looking for recognition that was cut short too soon. It's theatrical, dramatic, and very much in keeping with his persona. Whether psychological projection or genuine supernatural phenomena, his continuing presence at Hollywood Forever represents one of the industry's most enduring ghost stories. A narrative that, like the star himself, refuses to fade quietly into history. I suppose you can do better. That is correct. Nearby, in the same storied grounds of Hollywood Forever Cemetery, lies the crypt of Clifton, a star whose distinctive screen persona as the acerbic, sophisticated intellectual seems to continue in his afterlife presence. Best known for Laura and his icy on-screen charm, a cemetery tour guide began, then lowered her voice. His presence is less theatrical than, but in some ways more directly felt. He doesn't appear visually as often. Instead, people experience him as a palpable sense of being observed, evaluated, a continuation of the characters that made him famous. The phenomena reported near script align remarkably with his persona. Visitors consistently describe sudden localized cold spots that seem to move deliberately rather than remain stationary. These cold areas are often accompanied by a distinct sensation of pressure, an almost physical feeling of someone standing close, despite no visible presence. Crypt is said to emit cold bursts of air, and visitors claim to feel a sudden pressure on their chest as if someone is standing right behind them, explained a paranormal researcher who has documented multiple accounts. What's interesting is that these sensations often occur when someone makes an error about his career or misidentifies one of his films. It's as if his perfectionist nature continues even in death, correcting mistakes, maintaining exacting standards. Unlike the emotional warmth that characterizes reports around Monroe or the romantic energy associated with, the presence at his grave strikes many as intellectual and somewhat judgmental, a consciousness that observes with detachment rather than seeking connection. Psychics conducting investigations report consistent impressions of a personality concerned with legacy and proper recognition. That aligns with historical accounts of as someone deeply invested in how he was perceived, with obsessive attention to detail and presentation. Psychics believe he never left because he refuses to be forgotten, noted a medium who has conducted sessions near the crypt. The energy communicates a concern with how he's remembered, a desire to ensure his contributions to film aren't overlooked. Unlike spirits who linger due to trauma, this presence seems to remain by choice, still curating his legacy from beyond. While less dramatic than some Hollywood hauntings, the consistent reports of Clifton's watchful presence suggest a personality whose core concerns transcended physical boundaries. A star who remains as attentive to his reputation in death as he was in life. Well, then, if you'll be real quiet, I'll see if I can get the little boy to say something. Well, how are you today, Tommy? Oh, I'm feeling fine, thanks. Deep within the ornate corridors of Forest Lawn's great mausoleum lies a crypt with no name. The deliberately unmarked resting place of the man of 1,000 faces. Famous for his groundbreaking transformations in silent film classics like The Phantom of the Opera and The Hunchback of Dame, requested anonymity in death. This final act of disappearance behind yet another mask seems to have created ideal conditions for one of Hollywood's most persistent hauntings. The man of 1,000 faces is buried in a secret unmarked tomb, confirmed a longtime Forest Lawn employee. His son said his father wanted no name on his crypt because he believed his work should stand on its own, but that anonymity seems to have created a restless energy, as if in erasing his name, some essential part of him remains unresolved. Unlike celebrity graves where phenomena concentrate at a marked plot, activity associated with spreads throughout the mausoleum corridors. Security guards and maintenance personnel report unsettling, consistent sounds, low groans, shuffling footsteps, and occasional whispers that seem to follow visitors through the hallways, particularly after sunset. Visitors have heard groaning, scraping, and whispers in the mausoleum, noted a night security supervisor. Especially around Halloween. What makes these reports compelling is their consistency. Different people, often tourists who don't even know is buried here, describe nearly identical experiences. Shuffling footsteps that sound slightly irregular, like someone with a physical impairment following them just out of sight. That detail, the uneven gait, aligns with renowned physical performances. He famously transformed his body, portraying characters with twisted postures and altered movement, achieved through painful self-modification rather than camera tricks. Technical anomalies also cluster in specific corridors near the unmarked crypt. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain, digital photos sometimes contain unexplained blurs or distortions when no movement was present. They say never stop performing, suggested a paranormal researcher who investigated the site. The activity doesn't feel threatening, more like someone still practicing the craft, still experimenting with form and expression, as if the energy that drove those transformations in life continues to shift and adapt in death, unable to settle into a single final form. The unmarked tomb adds another layer. With no visible name to anchor the memory, the spiritual energy seems to move freely rather than tether to a single spot. The anonymity he chose in death created freedom in whatever remains, observed a medium. Without the anchor of his name, the energy moves like his characters moved, shifting, appearing and disappearing, always at the edge of perception. Perhaps the most artistically appropriate haunting in Hollywood, the man of 1,000 faces still changing form, still performing, from beyond the final curtain. At Mountain View Cemetery in Altadena, a modest marker bears the name of George Reeves, television's original Superman, whose life ended in controversy and whose death remains shrouded in competing theories. Found dead from a gunshot wound in 1959 under circumstances officially ruled suicide, but widely questioned. TV's original Superman died from a mysterious gunshot, noted a cemetery historian. The official ruling was suicide, but persistent theories about murder or accident have never been fully laid to rest. Neither, it seems, has Reeves himself. The phenomena reported at Reeves' grave are consistent and specifically tied to the circumstances of his death. Multiple independent visitors describe hearing a sudden sharp sound like a gunshot while standing near his marker, especially during quiet evening hours. It happens even when the cemetery is otherwise empty. Visitors report a loud bang, confirmed a groundskeeper, followed by the sensation of a cape brushing past. That tactile detail appears again and again, a brief pressure across shoulders and back, like heavy fabric moving quickly behind them, an unmistakable echo of Superman's iconic cape. Paranormal researchers have captured unusual readings at the site, audio anomalies, sharp EMF spikes, and temperature changes in patterns rather than gradual shifts. Some say he still seeks justice, explained an investigator. The energy doesn't feel peaceful, it feels active, like something remains unresolved. Whether suicide, murder, or tragic accident, the lack of resolution leaves a narrative gap, one that neither allows justice if he was killed, nor peace if he ended his own life. The persistent controversy creates a loop, suggested a medium. Energy follows thought, and so many people still question what happened that night. If Reeves departed with uncertainty, that would only intensify it. What makes the Reeves haunting particularly poignant is the central irony. A man forever associated with a hero who protected the innocent, yet was powerless to save himself. There's something mythic about it, observed a television historian. Superman represented justice. If justice was violated in Reeves' death, then the idea of his spirit still seeking it becomes a continuation of the story. Unlike most Hollywood hauntings that center around burial sites, the story of Peg presents a different case, a spirit divided between her physical resting place in Ohio and the Hollywood landmark forever tied to her tragic end. In 1932, The young actress leapt to her death from the Hollywood sign. She jumped from the sign, explained a Hollywood historian. Her body went home, her spirit didn't. This creates what paranormal researchers call a split haunting, a phenomenon occurring in multiple emotionally connected locations, regardless of where the remains are buried. The primary location is the Hollywood sign itself, especially the area near the H from which she fell. Hikers and park rangers report of a woman in 1930s-style clothing, often white or pale, moving in distress before vanishing. Though she's buried in Ohio, her ghost is seen near the sign, confirmed a park ranger. White dress, packing, lost, unfinished. The descriptions remain consistent across years. A young woman in period clothing, appearing disoriented, moving as if searching for something. Cluster around the anniversary of her death in September, but occur throughout the year. More surprisingly, activity is also reported at her burial site in Oak Hill Cemetery, Ohio. Visitors leave stones and small memorials, then return to find them rearranged into patterns, lines, circles, and shapes that don't occur naturally. People have found rocks moved into strange arrangements, noted an Ohio groundskeeper, as if someone's still trying to send a message. Electronic phenomena appear at both locations. Camera glitches, drained batteries, and faint whispered recordings that don't match ambient noise, suggesting a link between places separated by thousands of miles. Her energy seems divided because her life was divided, observed a medium who investigated both sites. Hollywood represents her broken dream. Ohio represents her roots. That split, where she died versus where she rests, creates a consciousness that can't fully settle. Her haunting embodies Hollywood's darker truth. For every star, countless dreamers vanish into disappointment. She feels like an unfinished conversation with Hollywood itself, a film historian said, a reminder that the glamour has a cost. In Pierce Brothers' Westwood Village Memorial Park, not far from Monroe, lies the niche of Todd, a brilliant comedic actress of the 1930s whose promising career ended with a mysterious death in 1935. Found in her car under circumstances never fully explained, Todd's passing generated conspiracy theories involving organized crime, business disputes, and personal vendettas. Found dead under suspicious circumstances, confirmed a night security guard, and her spirit is angry. Unlike the melancholy around Monroe or the theatrical flair around, the energy near Todd's niche is described as confrontational. Witnesses report sudden cold spots that do not dissipate, but seem to follow people moving through the area. Alongside the cold comes the feeling of being closely watched, judged. Staff say the air turns icy, explained a tour guide, and that her face appears in reflective surfaces nearby. The most frequently reported visual phenomena involves reflections, marble panels, glass vases, even phone screens. A woman's face appears in peripheral vision, vanishing the moment someone looks directly. The descriptions consistently match Todd, especially the eyes. Equipment malfunctions are common. Cameras capture unexplained light artifacts, audio picks up whispers, and batteries drain rapidly. Some believe she was murdered, and she's still trying to tell us, noted a researcher. The historical context deepens the haunting. Todd's case was quickly labeled accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, but questions linger. Who was with her, why certain evidence vanished, and whether powerful figures suppress the truth. The energy communicates injustice, said a medium. This presence feels aware of being wronged. Her haunting becomes more than a ghost story. It echoes a broader pattern. Talented women in early Hollywood whose suspicious deaths were not fully investigated, their narratives shaped by others. It feels like a demand for retrospective justice, observed a film historian, not only for her, but for the pattern. Within Hollywood forever lies a grave linked to one of the industry's earliest and most devastating scandals. Virginia. The young actress whose death after a 1921 party hosted by Roscoe Fatty changed Hollywood's relationship with public morality and scandal, was acquitted after multiple trials, but his career was destroyed, and his reputation was torn apart in the process. She died after attending an infamous party, explained a cemetery historian. The scandal never died. Visitors describe activity with an emotional signature. Unexplained sobbing, crying that seems to come from nowhere, has been reported by multiple unrelated witnesses, including people unfamiliar with her story. Her grave is visited by people who report sobbing, camera malfunctions, and overwhelming dread, confirmed a groundskeeper. Skeptics and believers alike describe the same phenomena. Cameras fail when aimed at the headstone, batteries drain, photos distort. These malfunctions often happen at her marker while nearby graves remain unaffected. The most disturbing component is emotional. Many visitors experience a sudden, crushing sense of dread that forces them to leave. Researchers call it emotional imprinting, energy capable of influencing the living. They say she's trapped in the moment that ruined her name, noted a paranormal investigator. Historically, the truth remains contested. Likely died of peritonitis caused by a ruptured bladder, but whether that resulted from assault or from chronic health issues worsened by the events of the night is still debated. What is certain is that in court and in newspapers, her character was attacked, her identity reduced to a scandal narrative. The energy feels caught in confusion and distress, explained a medium. Less about proving what happened, more about expressing the pain of being erased and rewritten. Her haunting feels like an unhealed wound in Hollywood's collective memory, a reminder of how easily a woman's truth can be buried beneath louder narratives. In Forest Lawn, behind an imposing bronze door marked simply HARLOW, lies Hollywood's original bombshell, Jean. She died in 1937 at just 26, at the height of fame. The original bombshell, began a cemetery guide, and her resting place is always cold. Visitors report a precise, persistent cold spot directly in front of her crypt, so distinct it feels like crossing a boundary into refrigerated air. Always cold, confirmed a security guard who patrols the mausoleum. It's not normal airflow, it's fixed, exact. Other phenomena follow. The rhythmic clicking of heels on marble when no one is there. The sound approaches, retreats, sometimes circles the crypt before fatting. Visitors also report physical reactions: nausea, dizziness, throat pressure, and shortness of breath, symptoms eerily echoing aspects of spinal illness, which involved kidney failure and fluid complications. Visitors report sudden nausea, lights dimming, and heels on marble, noted a researcher. The most intriguing element is the perceived connection to her second husband, Byrne, who died from a gunshot wound in 1932, officially ruled suicide but long debated. Some investigators believe an energetic link remains between the unresolved tragedy of Byrne and the abrupt ending of his own life. Some believe her energy is tied to Byrne, explained a medium. There's an unfinished corridor there, grief, questions, something unprocessed. Paranormal researchers suggest that if consciousness remains, it may reflect a life cut mid-story, full of momentum and identity, still evolving beyond the studio-created image. It doesn't feel like suffering, the medium said. It feels like processing, like an ending that came without warning. And now, when we step back and consider all 9 of these restless presences, patterns begin to emerge. Suspicious deaths, interrupted lives, public narratives stolen and rewritten, careers ended mid-sentence, truth buried under glamour. Hollywood created larger-than-life personas, observed paranormal researcher Doctor, who has studied celebrity grave sites for decades. The public projected enormous emotional energy onto these figures. Add unresolved endings or tragic departures, and you have ideal conditions for persistent conscious energy. What makes these hauntings especially compelling is how consistently the reported phenomena align with each star's life. Monroe's perfume and weeping reflect fear of loneliness. Scaped figure maintains his romantic mystique. Clifton's presence feels cold, exacting, judgmental. His energy roams, shifting, unanchored. George Reeves echoes the sound that ended his life and the cape that defined his role. Peg remains split between where she died and where she rests. Todd radiates indignation. Virginia carries sorrow and dread. Jean leaves cold air, dim lights, and the sound of glamour walking past. These aren't generic ghost stories, they carry signatures. Cemetery workers who encounter these phenomena have developed their own quiet philosophies. We see ourselves as custodians of both their resting places and their restless energies, said a longtime groundskeeper at Hollywood Forever who requested anonymity. Most of us have experienced things we can't explain, but we've learned to coexist. We acknowledge them. We treat their spaces with respect. We understand that for some, the final curtain may not have truly fallen. Whether you interpret these experiences spiritually, psychologically, or as something science has yet to define, their consistency demands serious consideration. When multiple unrelated witnesses report the same phenomena in the same locations over decades, Doctor noted, we're observing something beyond individual suggestion. The question isn't whether the experiences occur, but what they represent. And perhaps most haunting of all is what these stories reveal about Hollywood itself. For many of these stars, the ending was not their own. It was written by scandal, secrecy, studio control, public obsession, or an unanswered question that never stopped echoing. So tonight, if you find yourself passing through Lowe's Angels, near Westwood, Hollywood Forever, Forest Lawn, or the hills beneath the Hollywood sign, remember this. Some stories don't end when the credits roll. And in a city built on illusion, even death may not mean the show is over.